she was admired by all because of who she was, her value system, and her incredibly intense ability to compete at a level probably not witnessed prior to Pat becoming an icon. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Can you just share with us a favorite memory that you might have had with her, or several?
I have many memories of Pat, but my first memory was as a young administrator when I was in a women's basketball coaching search. And I reached out to Pat. I had met her a few times, and I had 2 or 3 names that I wanted to bounce off of her. But she was in one of her postseason runs. And so I simply left a message telling her that when she had time, if she wouldn't mind reaching out, she called. Called the next morning. That's just who she was. She was always wanting to help anybody with any issue. That was germane to her personality.
In your career, you've been around a lot of big-time coaches. How does she compare? Is there some impact that she's had?
And I've been very blessed to have known and worked with a handful of iconic coaches. I had the pleasure to visit personally a few times with Coach Ruby, and I had the pleasure of working with Coach Bowden, Coach Saban. I think what separates Pat is the fact that without Pat Summitt, women's athletics in general would not be where they are, in my opinion, and certainly women's basketball would not be enjoying the success it enjoys now, the visibility it enjoys now. Pat Summitt took women's basketball and by herself elevated it to an incredible level. No other coach has ever impacted a sport the way that she impacted women's basketball. But again, she impacted people well beyond sports. Again, I've been around intense coaches. I myself am competitive to a fault, but I loved watching Pat Summitt coach because of how competitive she was. She didn't request excellence, she demanded it. And every player she touched, every person she touched, took a little bit of that with them, having known her.
I guess to the best that you can recall, I guess the transition with Pat going to head coach emeritus and that whole season, I guess if there's anything you can disclose about those conversations and how tough that whole time was.
Well, she was great, Wes, and Tyler was great. Tyler played a big role in that whole transitional period. But just to have the opportunity to work with Pat is something that I'll always cherish.
As an athletic director, you understand the importance of student before athlete. Can you just talk about Pat Summitt's?
Everything that Pat did was genuine. There was never lip service. There was always passion and credibility. When Pat Summitt said that being a student was more important than being an athlete, she meant that. She was probably one of the first coaches to set down very plainly her expectations about class attendance, about being a student, about excelling, sitting in the first 3 rows. She had hard and fast guidelines that were followed to the letter. If they were not followed to the letter, then you would find yourself watching the game from the bench. Didn't matter if you were playing for a national title or if you were playing a non-league game. Her standards were her standards, and people were expected to abide by all of them. Another thing that all coaches, regardless of the sport, and I've heard them over the years, admired about Pat is that there was never any lip service.
It's pretty early, but any tentative plans or solid plans in terms of what y'all have to do to honor her and get through the school year in terms of uniforms?
We will be in those discussions, Steve, and are in some of those discussions, but today's not the day for those types of decisions. But certainly, we will do everything that we should do and more to honor and pay tribute to the greatest coach probably ever coached the game.
Dave, I think most of us in this room, probably most anyone who's watching this press conference has had someone affected, in their family or knows someone who's affected by this disease. I guess, can you speak to the way Pat sort of publicly combated that and the things that she did for that cause?
Just like she coached, Wes, when Pat had a priority, it became other people's priority. And I don't think there's been enough attention paid to the visibility that she's brought to that terrible disease. Not that those efforts weren't underway on a national level, but to have someone of the stature of Pat Summitt make that cause her cause did wonders for the awareness and wonders for the collective efforts to prevent that disease somewhere down the road from affecting so many people.
Her 100% graduation rate is something that's really been going around today amongst all of her other awards. But how can you put into words how just unreal that is, that programs, sports, that just doesn't happen very often?
It does not, and again, in my time here, we haven't had many, believe me, but 1 or 2 student athletes who got a little bit behind in their senior year, I can tell you from personal experience, they were not going to be that person. That's a part of her legacy that also doesn't get probably enough attention. But that statistic is staggering, and one that she took tremendous pride in.
Dave, as a guy who, one of your biggest jobs is to hire coaches, find the right coaches, can you just reflect on, as an AD, how having a coach like Pat Summitt on your staff would mean to an AD?
Well, it raises everyone's performance level. It raises everyone's desire, Mike, to excel. You can't be around Pat and not feel the passion. You have no blood in your body if you don't feel the passion. And yes, she had the stare. And yes, by the way, it was intimidating to all concerned. But when you visited with Pat on any topic, her sense of humor, her love for life, her love for family, her faith, all of that overshadowed what people generally saw on the sideline.
You mentioned her stare. Did you ever feel the wrath of that? Did you ever do something to bring that out?
No, but I remember watching a lot of games before coming to Tennessee and having the privilege to be in this role. And you would just kind of wait as a spectator from afar for the camera to go on. You know, almost pulled for somebody to turn the ball over, do something that would bring that about. And kidded her about that when I came to Tennessee. But she was so unique. There'll never be another Pat Summitt. There just won't be.
So
How many people have you been around that sort of command the room's attention the way that Pat did anytime she walked into pretty much any room?
Well, again, as I said, Wes, I've been more than blessed by, you know, being around coaches like I mentioned, Coach Bryant. You know, was another one that I had the privilege to know and be around. But they're so few and far between. You know, icons are rare breeds, and Pat Summitt is a very rare breed.
It was evident how much she impacted her players, but we've heard Butch Jones and other coaches talk about how Pat Summitt has taught them something. How have you seen her impact the other coaches that have come through UT?
Oh, every coach, and you didn't have to be a coach here with us at Tennessee. Every coach, regardless of the sport, admired Pat Summitt. Since 7 o'clock this morning, I've received numerous messages from coaches, soccer coaches, volleyball coaches, softball coaches, football coaches. She had the ability, because of who she was, to be a magnet for other coaches to emulate. The sport was unimportant. It was about her and what she stood for, and that passion and that drive, and her unwillingness to accept mediocrity, or for that matter, her unwillingness to accept being good. She wanted more than being good. She wanted excellence. And that's reflected in a lot of those messages I've received today.
Dave, in a time where Wes was talking about people rallying to the disease and the cause, she had a unique ability that whenever she said do something, everybody rode in the same direction for her. How special of a quality is that she could lead beyond the coaching platform for a cause, for the betterment of this university, the athletic department, anything like that?
That's the ultimate illustration of respect, Brent. And she earned the respect of everyone she ever worked with, coached, touched, had friendships with. She could light the room up because of the level of respect that people felt for her.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you all.